Have you ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why you went there, or met someone, shook their hand, heard their name, and forgot it just 5 seconds later? Maybe you've spent hours studying for an exam, only to realize that the next day your mind is almost blank. If that sounds familiar, don't worry. It doesn't mean you're unintelligent. It doesn't mean your memory is broken. In fact, science tells us something surprising. The human brain is capable of storing an astonishing amount of information. Some neuroscientists estimate that your brain has a storage capacity measured in petabytes, enough to hold millions of books. So the real problem isn't that your brain can't remember. The real problem is that nobody ever taught you how memory actually works. Imagine your brain as the world's most advanced library. Every experience, every face, every conversation, every lesson you learn is like a new book arriving at that library. But here's the catch. If the librarian simply throws every book into a random pile, finding it later becomes almost impossible. Memory works exactly the same way. If information enters your brain without attention, emotion, or organization, your brain struggles to retrieve it later. That's why memory isn't about storage. It's about retrieval. Psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus, one of the pioneers of memory research, discovered something that changed psychology forever. After performing thousands of experiments on himself, he found that people forget information incredibly fast. Within just one day, we can lose more than half of what we've learned if we never review it. This became known as the forgetting curve. At first, this discovery sounds discouraging, but hidden inside it is incredible news. The brain isn't designed to remember everything. It's designed to remember what it believes is important. Every time you review information at the right moment, you send your brain a powerful message. This matters. Keep this. Think about your childhood for a moment. You probably can't remember what you ate on an ordinary Tuesday 8 years ago, but you probably remember your first bicycle, your graduation day, or an unforgettable vacation. Why? Because emotion acts like glue for memory. When something makes you laugh, cry, feel excited, or even scared, your brain releases chemicals that strengthen the memory. That's why stories stay with us far longer than isolated facts. This is also why professional memory champions don't rely on having extraordinary brains. Researchers studying world memory competitions found that these champions are not born with magical memories. Instead, they use specific techniques that anyone can learn. With practice, ordinary people have transformed their memories into something extraordinary. One of the most powerful techniques ever discovered is called visual association. Your brain loves pictures far more than plain words. If I simply say the word apple, your brain doesn't store the letters apple instead. It instantly creates an image. Maybe it's a shiny red apple. Maybe it's green. Maybe it's sitting on your kitchen table. Images are naturally easier for the brain to remember. Now imagine trying to remember a shopping list that includes milk, bananas, eggs, toothpaste, and bread. Most people repeat the words over and over until they finally forget them. But memory experts do something completely different. They create an unusual mental movie. Imagine a giant banana driving a car made entirely of bread. The driver crashes into a waterfall of milk. Suddenly, thousands of eggs explode into the sky like fireworks while a huge tube of toothpaste sprays foam everywhere. It sounds ridiculous, and that's exactly why it works. The stranger, funnier, and more emotional the image becomes, the more unforgettable it is. This happens because the brain evolved to notice things that are unusual. For thousands of years, paying attention to unexpected events helped humans survive. Your brain is constantly asking one question: is this worth remembering? Ordinary information often gets ignored. Extraordinary information captures attention immediately. Another fascinating discovery comes from neuroscientist Dr. Wendy Suzuki, whose research shows that physical exercise dramatically improves memory. Just one session of moderate exercise increases blood flow to the brain and stimulates the growth of new neural connections. In other words, Moving your body literally helps your brain become better at remembering. That's why some of your best ideas appear during a walk rather than while staring at a screen. Sleep is another secret weapon that many people underestimate. While you're asleep, your brain isn't shutting down. It's actually working hard behind the scenes. During deep sleep, your brain organizes the experiences of the day, strengthens important memories, and removes unnecessary information. Researchers have repeatedly found that people who sleep well remember significantly more than people who stay awake all night trying to study. Sometimes the smartest study technique isn't another hour of reading. It's simply getting enough sleep. Now here's a question. Have you ever reread the same page of a book 3 or 4 times because your mind kept wandering? You're not alone. In today's world, our attention is constantly under attack. Notifications, endless scrolling, short videos, and multitasking train the brain to switch focus every few seconds. But memory begins with attention. If you never truly focus on something, your brain never has the chance to store it properly. You can't remember what you never fully noticed. Imagine trying to take a photograph while your hands are shaking. The picture becomes blurry. Attention works the same way. A distracted mind creates blurry memories. A focused mind creates lasting ones. This is why mindfulness has become such an important area of neuroscience research. Spending even a few minutes paying full attention to the present moment strengthens the brain's ability to concentrate. Better concentration leads directly to better memory. The two are inseparable. But perhaps the biggest myth about memory is this. People believe they need to read more in order to remember more. Surprisingly, the opposite is often true. The key isn't consuming more information. The key is actively interacting with what you learn. Educational psychologist Henry Roediger demonstrated this through the testing effect. Students who repeatedly tested themselves remembered significantly more than students who simply reread their notes again and again. Every time you force your brain to retrieve information, you strengthen the neural pathways connected to that memory. Retrieval isn't just a way of measuring memory. It actually builds memory. So the next time you finish reading a chapter, don't immediately read it again. Close the book. Ask yourself, what were the 3 most important ideas? If you struggle to answer, that's not failure. That's your brain growing stronger. Here's something even more exciting. Every memory you successfully recall becomes easier to recall again in the future. It's like walking through a forest. The first path is difficult because you're pushing through thick bushes, but each time you walk the same route, the path becomes clearer. Eventually, it becomes effortless. Your brain works exactly the same way. The truth is, memory isn't a gift reserved for a lucky few, it's a skill. And like every skill, it improves with the right methods and consistent practice. Once you understand how your brain naturally learns, remembering stops feeling like hard work and starts feeling almost effortless. Now, let me show you one of the most powerful memory techniques ever created. A technique so effective that it has been used for more than 2,000 years. It is called the memory palace. Despite its impressive name, you don't need a real palace. All you need is a place you already know by heart. Close your eyes for a moment and picture your home. Imagine walking through your front door. You can probably see the living room, the sofa, the television, the kitchen, maybe even the smell of your favorite meal. Isn't that amazing? Without looking at a single photograph, your brain recreated an entire place in vivid detail. That is the incredible power of spatial memory. Scientists believe our brains evolved to remember locations because survival depended on it. Ancient humans had to remember where food could be found, where dangerous animals lived, and how to return home safely. Even today, this ability remains deeply wired into the human brain. Memory champions take advantage of this natural strength. Instead of trying to memorize random information, they mentally place each piece of information in a familiar location. Later, they simply walk through that place in their imagination, collecting every memory along the way. Suppose you need to remember the planets of our solar system. Instead of repeating the names over and over, imagine opening your front door and seeing Mercury melting into liquid metal. In the living room, Venus is covered with glowing clouds. On your sofa, Earth is spinning like a giant globe. In the kitchen, Mars is coated in bright red dust. Every room becomes a storage space for knowledge. It may sound unusual, but brain scans show that experienced memory athletes activate regions associated with navigation far more than ordinary people. They aren't born with superior memories. They simply use the brain the way it naturally prefers to work. Another secret is something called chunking. Your brain doesn't like remembering long streams of unrelated information. It prefers meaningful groups. Think about phone numbers. Imagine someone says this number 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. That feels difficult. Now hear it this way: 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Suddenly it becomes much easier. The information hasn't changed. Only the way it's organized has changed. Psychologist George Miller suggested that our working memory can hold only a limited number of pieces of information at one time. But when we combine small pieces into larger, meaningful units, our memory becomes dramatically more efficient. This principle explains why experienced readers can understand entire sentences instead of reading one letter at a time. Chess masters don't memorize individual pieces. They recognize familiar patterns. Musicians don't think about every single note. They remember melodies. Experts are not always remembering more. Very often, they are remembering smarter. Now here's another fascinating truth. Your brain remembers what it understands. Many students try to memorize definitions word for word. Hours later, they realize almost everything has disappeared. Why? Because memorization without understanding is like writing on sand. The smallest wave washes it away. Physicist Richard Feynman, one of the greatest scientific minds in history, believed that if you truly understand something, you should be able to explain it in simple language that anyone can understand. This idea became known as the Feynman Technique. Here's how it works. Learn a concept, close the book, then explain it as if you're teaching a curious 12-year-old child. If you become confused, congratulations, you've just discovered exactly what you don't understand. Go back, learn that part again, and repeat the process. Every explanation strengthens your understanding, and stronger understanding creates stronger memory. Now think about how children learn. They ask questions. Why, how, what happens if? Curiosity keeps their brains active. Every answer connects to another question. That's why curiosity is one of the greatest memory boosters ever discovered. Neuroscientists have found that curiosity activates the brain's reward system. When you're genuinely interested in something, your brain becomes far more likely to store it for the future. So instead of forcing yourself to remember facts, try becoming curious about them. Ask yourself, why does this happen? How does it work? What makes this important? The more questions you ask, the stronger your memory becomes. There's another habit quietly destroying memory every single day: multitasking. Many people proudly say they can study while watching videos, replying to messages, checking social media, and listening to music with lyrics. The brain disagrees. Research consistently shows that what we call multitasking is actually task switching. Every switch forces your brain to stop, reset, and refocus. This consumes mental energy and weakens memory formation. Imagine trying to write a sentence while someone keeps turning the lights on and off every few seconds. You might eventually finish, but it will take longer, you'll make more mistakes, and you'll remember less. Deep focus is becoming one of the rarest skills in the modern world. Ironically, that makes it one of the most valuable. When you give something your complete attention, your brain treats it as important. Strong attention creates strong memories. Let's talk about repetition. Most people repeat information the wrong way. They read the same paragraph again, and again, and again, but your brain quickly becomes familiar with the words. Familiarity creates the illusion of learning, even when very little information has actually been stored. Instead, psychologists recommend spaced repetition. Review information after 1 day, then after 3 days, then after 1 week, then after 2 weeks. Each review arrives just before the memory begins to fade. Every successful recall strengthens the neural pathway until remembering becomes almost automatic. This simple strategy has helped millions of students, doctors, language learners, and professionals remember enormous amounts of information without endless hours of study. Here's something even more remarkable: every time you successfully remember something, your brain literally changes. The connection between neurons becomes stronger. Scientists call this neuroplasticity. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on what you repeatedly think, practice, and remember. In other words, every time you challenge your memory, you are building a better brain. Here's something that might completely change the way you think about memory. Your brain is always remembering. The question is, what is it choosing to remember? Every single day, you're surrounded by thousands of sights, sounds, conversations, advertisements, notifications, and thoughts. If your brain tried to save every tiny detail, it would quickly become overwhelmed. So it does something incredibly intelligent. It filters. Imagine standing in a crowded airport. Hundreds of people are talking at the same time. Yet the moment someone says your name, your attention shifts instantly. That phenomenon is known as the cocktail party effect. Your brain constantly searches for information that feels personally meaningful. This reveals a powerful lesson. If you want to remember something, make it personal. Don't simply memorize a historical date. Imagine yourself living during that event. Picture the streets, the people, the emotions, the sounds. Turn facts into experiences. The more personally meaningful something becomes, the more deeply your brain stores it. This is exactly why stories are unforgettable. For thousands of years, human knowledge wasn't stored in books. It was passed from one generation to the next through stories. Stories combine emotion, imagination, curiosity, and meaning into one unforgettable package. Think about your favorite movie. You probably remember the characters, the dialogue, the ending, and maybe even the soundtrack. Yet you might struggle to remember what you read in a textbook just last week. The difference isn't intelligence. The difference is emotion. Emotion tells the brain, this matters. That's why one of the fastest ways to improve memory is to connect new information to something you already care about. Suppose you're learning a new language. Instead of memorizing isolated vocabulary, imagine using those words while ordering food in your favorite restaurant, talking to a close friend, or traveling to your dream destination. Suddenly, those words have purpose. Purpose creates meaning. Meaning creates memory. Now let's talk about something that quietly damages memory without most people realizing it: stress. A little stress can sharpen your attention, but chronic stress does the exact opposite. When you're constantly anxious, overwhelmed, or exhausted, your body releases high levels of cortisol, often called the stress hormone. Over time, excessive cortisol can interfere with the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for forming new memories. That's why during stressful moments, people often say, "My mind just went blank." It isn't because they suddenly became less intelligent. Their brain simply shifted its priority from learning to survival. This is why taking care of your mental health isn't separate from improving your memory. It's part of improving your memory. Even a few minutes of deep breathing, a short walk outside, or quiet reflection can help your brain return to a state where learning becomes much easier. Now here's another surprising discovery. Your memory doesn't work like a video camera. It works more like a storyteller. Every time you remember an event, your brain reconstructs it. Sometimes it fills in missing details. Sometimes it changes small parts without you even noticing. Psychologist Elizabeth Loftus spent decades studying memory and demonstrated just how surprisingly flexible human memory can be. Her research showed that memories are not perfect recordings. They are reconstructions. That's why eyewitnesses can honestly remember the same event differently. Understanding this teaches us something valuable. Don't blindly trust every memory. Instead, strengthen important memories by reviewing them, writing them down, and connecting them to reliable information. Speaking of writing, have you ever noticed that you remember things better after writing them by hand? There's a scientific reason for that. Writing activates multiple areas of the brain at the same time. Your eyes process the information. Your hands create the movement. Your brain organizes the meaning. All of these actions work together to strengthen memory. Typing certainly has its advantages, but when your goal is long-term learning, handwriting often creates deeper understanding. Now let's explore another habit shared by exceptional learners. They don't fear forgetting, they expect it. And because they expect it, they build systems that make remembering easier. Great memory isn't about never forgetting. It's about knowing how to recover information quickly. Scientists often describe memory as a network. Every new idea connects to older ideas. The more connections you create, the easier it becomes to find that memory later. Imagine trying to reach one house using only a single road. If that road is blocked, you're stuck. Now imagine 10 different roads leading to the same house. No matter which direction you come from, you'll still arrive. Your brain works exactly the same way. Every example, every story, every question, every conversation creates another pathway toward the same memory. That's why discussing what you've learned with other people is incredibly powerful. When you explain ideas aloud, answer questions, or debate different perspectives, your brain builds additional connections. Learning becomes stronger, memory becomes faster, confidence grows naturally. Now ask yourself something honestly. When was the last time you truly challenged your brain, not by endlessly scrolling through short videos, but by learning a completely new skill? Maybe it was playing a musical instrument, learning photography, cooking a new recipe, speaking another language, or solving difficult puzzles. Every new skill forces your brain to create fresh neural pathways. The more often you do this, the more adaptable your brain becomes. Think of your brain like a muscle. Muscles become stronger when challenged consistently. The brain follows the same principle. Every meaningful challenge makes it a little stronger than before. And here's perhaps the most encouraging truth of all. You're not limited by the memory you have today. Thanks to neuroplasticity, your brain continues changing throughout your life. Age doesn't stop learning. Lack of practice does. Every single day gives you another opportunity to strengthen your memory, one small habit at a time. The question isn't whether your brain can improve. Science has already answered that. The only question that remains is, will you train it? Now, imagine waking up 1 year from today. You walk into a meeting and remember everyone's name without hesitation. You read a book and actually remember its most important ideas months later. You learn a new language faster. You prepare for exams with confidence. You have meaningful conversations because you remember details that other people forget. That future isn't reserved for geniuses. It's available to anyone who understands one simple truth: memory is trained, not gifted. The greatest mistake people make is believing that a good memory is something you're born with. Science tells a very different story. Research on the brain has shown again and again that repeated practice changes the structure of neural connections. Every time you focus deeply, retrieve information, sleep well, exercise, and review what you've learned, your brain becomes a little more efficient than it was yesterday. Small improvements may seem invisible from one day to the next, but over weeks, months, and years, those improvements become extraordinary. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. The first attempt feels impossible. You lose balance, you wobble, maybe you even fall. But after enough practice, something incredible happens. You stop thinking about balancing. Your brain has built the necessary pathways and the skill becomes automatic. Memory works exactly the same way. At first, remembering names, facts, or new ideas may require effort. Eventually, the techniques become second nature. And remembering becomes easier than forgetting. So where should you begin? Not with 10 different techniques, not with expensive courses, and certainly not by trying to memorize everything at once. Start with just one habit. When you meet someone new, repeat their name naturally during the conversation. When you finish reading a chapter, close the book and explain it in your own words. When you're learning something important, create a vivid mental picture. Before going to sleep, spend 5 minutes reviewing what you learned during the day. Those tiny actions may seem insignificant, but never underestimate the power of consistency. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, famously wrote, "Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement." Memory improves the same way, not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through small actions repeated consistently. Here's another challenge you can start today. For the next 7 days, pay closer attention to your surroundings. Notice people's faces. Notice the color of the buildings you pass. Notice the conversations you usually ignore. Notice the smell of the morning air. Notice the music playing in the background. The more aware you become, the more information your brain receives with clarity. Remember, attention is the front door of memory. If information never enters through that door, it cannot be stored. Another powerful habit is keeping a learning journal. Every evening, ask yourself 3 simple questions. What did I learn today? What surprised me today? What do I still want to understand? These questions force your brain to retrieve information, organize it, and connect it with existing knowledge. Over time, this simple practice dramatically strengthens long-term memory. And don't forget one final ingredient: curiosity. Never stop asking questions. Children learn incredibly fast because they're endlessly curious. They don't worry about looking foolish. They simply want to understand the world. Somewhere along the way, many adults stop asking questions. But curiosity is one of the greatest gifts you can give your brain. Every question opens a new pathway. Every answer builds another connection. Every connection strengthens memory. Imagine 2 people reading the exact same book. One reads it simply to finish. The other reads with curiosity, asking questions, making connections, imagining examples, and teaching the ideas to someone else. Months later, who do you think will remember more? The answer is obvious. Learning isn't measured by how many pages you read. It's measured by how deeply your brain engages with the ideas. So from this day forward, don't judge yourself because you forgot something. Instead, ask a better question. Did I give my brain a reason to remember it? Because memory isn't about trying harder. It's about learning smarter. The techniques you've discovered today aren't magic. They're based on decades of psychological and neuroscientific research. Visual association, the memory palace, chunking, spaced repetition, active recall, deep focus, quality sleep, regular exercise, curiosity, understanding instead of blind memorization. These aren't isolated tricks. Together, they form a complete system for building a stronger, faster, and more reliable memory. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need perfect genetics. You don't need a photographic memory. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You simply need the willingness to practice, because every expert, every scientist, every doctor, every successful entrepreneur, every great teacher, and every memory champion started exactly where you are today, knowing a little, forgetting often, learning gradually, and improving one day at a time. So the next time someone says, "I have a terrible memory," remember this. Memory is not your identity, it's a skill, and skills can always be improved. Your brain is far more powerful than you've been led to believe. Treat it well, challenge it often, feed it meaningful knowledge, give it enough rest, stay curious, keep learning. And one day you'll look back and realize something remarkable. The things that once felt impossible to remember now come to you effortlessly. Because the greatest memory technique isn't hidden inside a secret book. It isn't locked inside the mind of a genius. It's hidden inside the habits you choose to practice every single day. Thank you for watching. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another video designed to help you unlock the full potential of your mind. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and never underestimate what your brain is truly capable of.